Hey everyone, this is Tom Sega from Duluth Pack, and this is the Duluth Pack podcast, Leader of the Pack. And today our guest is a good friend of mine who I met several years ago. It is Greg Glover, Senior Product Management Director at Merrell Footwear Company, a division of Wolverine Worldwide. Welcome, Greg.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Great to be with you today.
It's great to have you. And you know, folks, here's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn the history of Greg Glover at a large global company and how he got into a company like that from his interest, from his schooling, and then Greg's lineage as he worked his way up to what I consider to be kind of a big dog over there. So we're gonna figure out what it takes for people to do that. So if you're interested in a career that you know what, you can have some great loyalty to a company and move up, listen to what Greg has to say today. So Greg, from that, just give us your background. Give us, who is Greg Glover? Your interest growing up and then into your schooling, and then we'll get into your career.
Thanks, Tom. I mean, you say awfully nice things. I'm not sure I'm a big dog. Maybe literally I'm a big dog, but thank you very much. So, I'm a strong believer, Tom, that, God puts us right where he wants us, and not always do our plans always work out exactly the way we, want them to. And, when I was in school, I surely had nothing to do with business. I didn't study business at all. Like I studied sociology and psychology and thought I wanted to be a family and marital therapist. That's kind of what I had gone to school for. And after school, I moved out west and met my wife out there. And, I was working with kids that were wards of the state and, that were adjudicated and, trying to get them on their own feet as they kind of hit that age. Then we moved back to Michigan and I went back to work in the outdoor shop that I had worked in through college, and I was doing that kind of as a part-time gig while trying to further my career until I, just one day realized like this wasn't the path for me. So
Greg, what were you doing in that outdoor shop?
So, I owe a lot of credit to Eric and Kim Pearson. They owned Bill and Paul Sports Shop here in Grand Rapids. It's kind of the go-to specialty shop here in West Michigan, just working retail. And it has a great history behind it, that shop, still around today. And I went from just working on the floor to, being one of the managers of the shop. And, through that process, really kind of got to know a lot of our different sales reps. And that's kind of how I ended up in the outdoor world.
And so you learned a lot when you were there because you start on the floor as a sales rep. So you learn what the sales end of it is. You move into management. You learn what some of the management is. And then in any retail, you have a bunch of suppliers, and you started to get to know suppliers for the supply chain.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think, through that too, though, and I just want to touch, like, if anybody wanted to, be in this world, like, I think retail is a great stepping stone to getting into the outdoor industry. Especially, in today's day and age where, we are so consumer focused. I mean, I know Merrell is, I know you guys are. And I think through working on the floor and interacting with the consumer, you really get to know what people are looking for and what people want, whether it's just simple things like watching how they interact with the product. How do they, for me, it's like, that first moment from the time they open the shoebox to pulling the shoe out to trying it on. There's a lot to be learned there. And I still lean heavily into that every day.
I have to agree with you because when you're on the floor, you're the eyes, the ears, all the senses come out when you're working with a customer base. And then you're also getting, like you said earlier, to get to know your vendors who supply you with those goods and train you and all that, so that you can make sure you're getting your customer into the right product, not just a product. And I think there's a tremendous amount of growth people can have working retail, specifically early on in their careers, because you're going to gain so much knowledge.
Absolutely. I mean, so, from there, I really kind of just had the opportunity to join a rep group or an agency that, they had Merrell and they had about 5 other lines at the time. And it was really exciting, kind of traveling the Midwest, working with, outdoor specialty accounts, working with, independent footwear accounts, kind of ran the gamut, because, we got to see it all, and it was just truly exciting.
So, Greg, tell, for people who don't know what an independent agency or a rep group actually is, what do they do?
Yeah, so a lot of brands, they don't employ a sales force. What they'll do is they'll, you know, contract rep groups to represent them. So you're not a direct employee. You just work on commission, and you may carry, 5 lines. You may end up having 10 lines, and for us, it was everything from footwear to snowshoes to ski poles, had different apparel lines, sock lines. So you would ultimately end up working with several different buyers. So if I was visiting, Duluth Pack, and visiting your store, I might meet with your footwear buyer 1 hour, and I might work with your apparel buyer the next hour. So.
Okay, so what that does for a company is give more boots on the ground, if you will, more sales force in all the regions. If you were just talking, let's just talk United States, you'd be able to cover the West Coast, East Coast, South, North, Midwest, all of that, because you'd have different agencies or rep groups covering territories, if I'm hearing you correct.
Yep.
And then you just have a lot more boots on the ground than you would otherwise be able to have.
Absolutely. So the group that I work for covered, for most of our brands, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and even parts of Illinois.
Okay. And would you cover all that territory, Greg, yourself, or would you have a piece of that?
I just had a piece of that. So, and the piece really kind of depended on the brand. So, for most of my time with the agency, I covered most of Southern Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana.
So what do you think, Greg, working for an independent agency, a rep group, were some of your biggest learning lessons in business and for the advancement of your career to get to your next steps?
Well, I think, the biggest thing there was, time management. When you work for yourself, your boss can be pretty hard on you. You realize that, a day off, a day in the woods is also a day that's costing you money. So you have to manage your time well, manage your travel. If I was going to go to Ohio, I was going to try to see as many people in Ohio as I possibly could, to make it worth my while. So I wasn't running back there necessarily the next week.
So what you're doing is saying, hey, I'm setting up a schedule. So if I'm traveling all the way to Ohio, I'm going to literally Monday, I'm just going to fill that schedule up and make sure that I used to call it a trap line, if you will, that I'm going to hit everyone I can on Monday. And then Tuesday morning, I'm going to drive at night to another city. And that's where I start the next morning, bright and early at another place, so that you're hitting and using your time as well as you possibly can, as efficient as you possibly can. Because I heard you say something earlier, and that was we were commission based.
Absolutely. So all that travels on your dime.
And I don't sell, I don't make any income.
Exactly. Kill what you kill, eat what you kill. So.
Yep, exactly. And so you did that as an independent rep for how many years, Greg?
I did that for about 4 years.
Okay.
The agency that I worked for, our big account that paid most of the bills was Galleons. So if you remember back in the day when Galleons was around, that was our major account that paid for most of the bills.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the night before my daughter was born, my first child, Galleons was sold. So there goes our biggest account out the door. Galleons was gone. And at that point, I knew that, I was probably going to have to, kind of look for something else or look for another opportunity. Um, at that time, it was nice enough that our VP of sales brought me into Merrell as an employee and gave me an opportunity to be actually an employee rep. So I did that for a couple of years.
Tell us what an employee rep, what your duties were.
So it's very much, very similar to, independent sales rep, but now you're an employee. So, and now you're focused on one brand versus multiple brands. It's probably less commission based, more of a base salary, just a little bit more stable from week to week, month to month. So
Just still have to hustle.
oh, you still got to hustle. There's still some pretty big expectations out there for sure.
I always tell people, because as you know, I'm a salesman from the top of my head to the tip of my toes. And just last week, actually, I gave a presentation, and one of the things I tell salespeople is if you're going to make a successful career in sales, you need to be the first one in the office and the last one to leave every day. So whatever time zone that you're calling in, you need to be there to start early with the Eastern time zone and stay late to hit your customers on the Pacific time zone and hit that in between, because sales is a lot of work. And generally there is some type of a commission in there for people to make their income.
Absolutely.
You start in sales, not only on the floor of brick and mortar retail, then move into management. Your career progresses and you move into rep group sales. So you're on the road quite a bit. You're pretty much almost like an independent. Even though you work for a rep group, you're an independent, and this is my territory, and I need to make it happen in that territory.
Absolutely.
Tons of learning and education going on there. And then you move in as an inside sales rep for Merrell.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
From there, you start getting into some product expertise areas.
yep. So, once I was inside Merrell as an employee, I was, you know, luckily just given lots of different opportunities to touch lots of different parts of the business. There's a few different jobs in between, but the one that really where I got to start touching product was I was the, US or North American product line manager. So I was responsible for everything that was in the line from a North American point of view. So kind of working with both the US sales team and the Canadian sales team at that time, really kind of focused on their line assortment of what products they would have for a particular season to sell and promote. And during that time, I was really able to work with our product development team, giving them briefs of what we needed to update, different opportunities of where we could go, what was going on within the market. Oftentimes,
what product line was that?
That was for Merrell. That was the greater brand. So covered everything from our hiking to our lifestyle at the time, all aspects of Merrell.
So this was big picture product line manager.
Yeah, this was big picture. So it's kind of a liaison between the U.S. sales team and the product development team at the time.
So tell us what your responsibilities in that role look like as a product line manager. North America, so you have a huge territory. I'm assuming a lot of travel going on at this time.
Yep. So I would be out with our sales reps at the time. I was doing a lot of line showings with accounts, with national accounts. We would take concept product to some of those biggest accounts early on, try to basically sell the dream of like, hey, this is where we want to go. You have to remember that our product development cycle is basically 18 to 24 months out. So the product that you're seeing in market today, we worked on 2 years ago, basically.
And that was my next question. So everybody, we're talking to Greg Glover, the Senior Product Management Director for Merrell Footwear. And tell us, Greg, a little bit about that whole conception of a new product, because you just said it's like 18 months, possibly more than 18 months from, hey, we hear customers asking us, what about this? What about this? And you bring this back to the team, and we'll get into some of that. Tell us what really goes internally in a company into, hey, I bring this idea back to all the way to we launch this product.
Yeah. So it all really, starts with kind of consumer insights. Like, again, everything kind of coming back to the consumer. We're always kind of looking at, okay, what's going on at retail, what's working, what's not working. There's lots of different trend analysis out there that we can subscribe to that tells us kind of what's going on at the macro level. And then we're always kind of looking at our own products and like, what's the life cycle of something? Depending on the product, we may update it every 2 years or every 4 years, or even more. Then we're constantly like, okay, like, let's say we're moving on to a new product, or we know that a product needs to be updated in 2 years. We'll kind of look at the existing product that we're trying to replace and kind of like tear it down. Okay, what's working with it? What's not working? How could we make it, even better for the consumer at the end of the day? It's been, and then from there we'll write a brief, kind of like, okay, this is the competitive set. This is who we're competing with. This is where we want to sell it. This is where the product's going to live. This is the price that we want to sell it at. And then we'll work directly with our design team. So in my role today, I'm constantly working with designers and developers, to build that future of Merrell. So then over that 18 to 20 months, we're looking at multiple different pullovers or samples of the shoe, drawings of the shoe, working with different factories on samples, to the point where we'll get to what we call our, global sales conference. So, we have our global sales conference next week for second half of 22 or fall 22. Well, we'll introduce all of our fall 22 product to our sales team. And from there, they'll start going out and selling that product to retailers. And then trying to build up the order book so we can deliver product next fall.
So for people that don't know some of this progression, you said to build up our order book, because you don't have, and I'll just jump in and probably give a little of the secret away, you don't have all these made when you're out selling them. Your reps have some samples.
Yep. So
now you have to build thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pairs of shoe ABC or boot ABC. How does that whole thing work?
Well, I mean, it's all about forecasting, right? And just like the weatherman, sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. But, you're working off of a forecast of, what's been given to you by sales reps, what's been given to you through historical data of like product. And, especially right now with what's going on around the world, forecasts are really important, and getting a forecast that's, relatively accurate. Because once you're out selling that, we start buying it right away. So a certain amount of our product is bought well in advance of us getting the first order. And then as orders come in, we continue to adjust that forecast and work with the factories to, make sure that we have the right amount of product at the time that the consumer is going to want it.
And so you're on the supply end, and we are a supplier, Duluth Pack, of Merrell Footwear. And so we're on the customer end buying it so we can sell it in the brick and mortar. And just so people understand, this cycle is, Greg and his team comes and their sales reps and sell to us for, right now we're placing our orders or have already placed our orders for next spring. And that's part of the forecasting that Greg's talking about, is called preseason orders. So if you're buying anything at folks at a brick and mortar store, we'll just talk outdoors right now because that's what we're talking about is lifestyle outdoor type products. Is that we purchased all these from our end as a preseason order from Greg 6 to 12 months in advance because now you, Greg, have to go build it all.
Absolutely, which is definitely extremely tricky today in the world that we live in.
Well, that's my next question is there's a word out there right now or a statement called supply chain. And everybody who is a manufacturer is saying we're having supply chain issues. I don't even know if the customers are fully grasping what that means. And I don't want it to be overused because people say, well, that's an easy excuse for people is to say we're having supply chain issues. Through COVID, I want to talk a little bit about what happened in your company through COVID. And then I want to talk about supply chain. So if we can back up a little bit, COVID hits 18 months ago. What changes in your world, Greg?
Wow, I mean, it was disruptive to say the least, right? Like nobody had ever seen this before. Nobody studied it in school. Nobody knew what to do. We didn't know, day to day what was going to go on, long enough what was going to happen in a month or 2 months. So, I think, if you look back to when everything started to be shut down and, kind of a mile marker, I think I'll always remember the meeting I was in, the place I was in when that hammer came down that, we were going to shut down. Wolverine took the stance that they were going to send us home for 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, I don't know what we expected was going to be different. Nobody knew. But that 2 weeks turned into 18 months basically. You're still in our office today, probably any given day there's probably only 20% of the people in the office, and the rest are working from home. But retailers were shut for multiple months. I don't know how many months you shut your doors, Tom, but
we were closed between 10 and 12 weeks.
Exactly. So it changed retail, changed the factories. Our factory base was changing. They were having shutdowns. They were having delays. So yeah, I mean, it was a major hurdle. We're still feeling that pain today. I think, and we're going to see it continue to disrupt or be disruptive for the next, probably 18 to 24 months. And it's not just, it's not just footwear. It's, it's everything. I mean, we just did a pretty big project at our house. I ordered a dishwasher in January of this year, and I still don't have that dishwasher. And I don't have visibility to when it will come.
Yes, you do. The dishwasher's name is Greg.
Exactly. Luckily, I have 2 kids. So.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. If they want to get their allowance, they can wash some dishes, right? So are you still working from home?
I am not. I choose to go to the office. I like being in the office. I'm in the office, pretty much 5 days a week. I like being there. I like being able to work with my team that decides to be there. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are, continuing to work from home, and I know everybody has kind of their own position on it and their own comfort level. But for me, I feel like the office is the best place for me to be.
So we're doing this interview over Zoom because we live in different states. But you have decided to go in the office, a lot haven't. So this Zoom, Teams, whatever world has become a little bit of your norm, I'm assuming, in the last 18 months. Tell me what the good is of that. Tell me what the challenges have been for you in your role.
It's funny. So the week before everything shut down, or actually as things were shutting down, I was on my way to Calgary for a meeting. And as I was sitting in the airport in Minneapolis, I get the email that all travel is halted. If you're in the middle of a trip, return home. And so I called my boss at the time and was like, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to keep going or do you want me to come home? And he's like, no, keep going. It's not that big a deal.
Now you're in a foreign country.
I think everything's going to be just fine. Man, I'm glad I did that then. So I got into Calgary and got out of Calgary just fine, and everything shut down. But I looked back to the meeting that I went to, and that meeting, could I have done it on Zoom? At that time, I would have told you, Tom, there's no way I could do that meeting over Zoom. I had to be there in person for that meeting. Today, I wouldn't even think twice about it. I would be like, yeah, we'll totally do it over Zoom, and I'll save myself a few days of travel, and we'll just do it over Zoom and be done in an hour. So I think it's made the world, a little bit smaller, which is nice in some ways. It's a lot easier to keep up with people. Imagine, if we were just doing this over the phone. Like, I like, the fact that we're doing it over Zoom. I'm able to see you. I'm able to communicate, have that, eye to eye, contact. And that's just the way I operate. As salespeople, we deal a lot with relationships. And I think, this really allows you to keep those relationships up. So I think that's the good of it. I think, the downside to it, and the reason I choose to go to the office more, is I think, Zoom can be a hurdle to collaboration. And in the world that I'm in, my role deals with a lot of collaboration. Where somebody has an idea, and that idea can spin from anywhere. I may say, hey, we should build this. And the guy next to me might say, you know what? I don't know if we can build that, but what we could do is this. And it just keeps rolling from there. And that just seems to be a lot easier to do in person than over Zoom.
Have you been to any trade shows since the initial shutdown?
I have not. No, I have not been to a trade show in almost 2 years. That's the longest I've not been to a trade show in the last 20 years. It's very strange. But I think, even just the concept of trade shows are going to see a major change, because I think what trade shows used to allow is this interpersonal relationships and these conversations, and you meet up with friends. I think, people have just kind of replaced that in some ways. And I think, companies are starting to write that kind of out of their budget. I think there's some trade shows that are really important that we'll continue to go to, and maybe others that will just kind of go the wayside.
I agree. And I'm older than you, and I come from the old school where it's all about pressing the flesh and getting to know people face to face. And I think there's going to be somewhere in a hybrid. If somebody was to ask my opinion, I think the pendulum swung from one way, that by the end of trade show season, when there was preseasons coming up, that we were so exhausted from going from city to city to city to trade shows week after week, the pendulum swung to, it shut completely down, to somewhere in between, that we've become more efficient, that we can get some things done over a Zoom or over a phone call. We just learned that this is the way the world is. But there's also got to be that relationship part that you mentioned that has to continue, because I've always said it's a lot easier to buy from somebody somebody you like, somebody you trust, and you've built that trust by being together versus just over the phone or over a Zoom or over an email. And selfishly, I hope it comes back somewhere in between and doesn't stay way over here.
Well, and I think, too, I think, people like you and I are pretty good at, keeping up relationships. So we'll find ways around those barriers. Shoot, you and I text a lot at this time of year. But what it is the hurdle is really, how do you form new relationships?
Bingo.
Because if it wasn't for trade shows, if trade shows didn't exist, you and I never become friends.
You're right.
It just never happened. That's how you and I got connected. I was just a lover of the brand. My brother, when I was in high school, he's a Yooper. He's spent more time living in the UP of Michigan than he's lived downstate, so I think he's now officially a Youper. But I think Youpers definitely have an affinity for your brand. I think they, kind of half of them probably identify as either being a Badger or being part of Minnesota before they, identify as being part of Michigan. But he gave me my first Duluth Pack in high school, and I always loved that bag. I carried it through high school and college. And then when I saw your brand at OR or Outdoor Retailer, I just wanted to come over and tell you how much I loved your bag. And that's kind of where you and I hit it off and became friends.
Had a lot in common, and that happened because we were face to face, and we, it's like, I love your brand. Oh, thank you. How did you get into it? And those conversations. So let's go a little bit forward here, Greg. We did a collaboration together between Merrell Footwear and Duluth Pack.
Wasn't that fun?
And it was a blast. But I want you to explain to people because you're the guy who had this vision, the conception of this whole thing, and you approached me. And I remember exactly where I was standing at a trade show, folks, and Greg came up and said, I have an idea. Can you tell everyone about this and work it forward? All they know now is I gave out the word that we did a collaboration.
Absolutely. I mean, so collaborations are definitely a hot ticket in today's market. You see brands coming together to do mashups all over the place, in very unexpected ways, in some ways very expected. An example of one that's going on right now, you may have seen is, the North Face and Gucci, two very unexpected brands that would come together and work on a project. Well, I don't know. I just thought, hey, at the time I was overseeing Merrell's Work line, working on our work product. And I just thought, gosh, there has to be something there, a project that you and I could take on together and build a product. Like what would a boot look like from Merrell, but through the lens of Duluth Pack, and together, with our developer at the time. So I think it was, myself and you and Kara and our sales director, Tom, like, all right, let's take this on. What can we do? So we started to get samples of your materials and your leathers and your canvas. And all right, how do we apply this to a boot? And I think it took us about 18 months to, see that product all the way through to market. And it was just so much fun.
Can you go back, Greg, and tell us how you actually approached me? Because I thought that was pretty unique.
Well, I mean, it didn't happen overnight, right? Like it was, years in the coming. So I think the first time I asked you about it, Merrell Work wasn't even a thing. I was like, hey, how can we do a project with you? Because I was just really interested in your canvas. And, I think if there's a silhouette that people know from Merrell, it's the Jungle Mock. And I think my initial concept was, how do we use your canvas and come up with a Duluth Pack Jungle Mock? And that just kind of seemed to stall out. But then, once I was kind of given the opportunity to oversee the work line, I had a little bit more, creative license, and it was just an amazing opportunity.
Just so people know what the final product looked like. And again, this took at least 18 months from Greg first approaching me at a trade show to make a work boot that had Duluth Pack leather, Duluth Pack canvas, the Duluth Pack moosehead leather patch on the side, two versions, a soft toe and a hard toe, and then had a little plaque down, a lace plaque down at the bottom that had Duluth Pack on it, made by Merrell. And so there's a lot of creative ideas and creative ways that people can do things. You said right now, North Face and Gucci are doing a product, and you and I've talked about maybe looking in the future at, number two. We did number one, and I remember very clearly when your team said this is going to be a huge energy story for us, and you being a large company with resources that we don't have, sent a complete crew up to Duluth and filmed for like 4 or 5 days with a team of people to get the energy story, or the story behind us being a 140-year-old brand now, our workers, most importantly, the people who make the bags and do this every day. And then that story comes up to these two companies come together to make something really cool. And there's about a 4 or 5 minute video that you did over shooting like 4 days that is an unbelievable piece, really professional and really cool. And the creative that went into that from your team is absolutely amazing. And it was a heck of a fun project. I hope we can do that again. But those are things that people like Greg work on all the time and are trying to envision what's our next really cool thing we can do that fits the needs of our customers.
Absolutely. And I think, for people listening, you should definitely go out and find that video. If you type in Merrell Duluth Pack, you can still find that video. I know it exists still out on YouTube, and that video still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I think it really kind of celebrates your brand. It celebrates who Merrell is. And I think nothing more, it celebrates kind of our legacy and tie to the Great Lakes states.
And I think that also tells a story on if somebody's in positions like you or would seek a position like yours in a large company, that if you put in your time, you work hard, that there's some latitude given for a lot of creativity to literally conceptually come up with something like, hey, if we approach these people, maybe we can do something together. And a lot of people who have creative genes out there, which I can't say that I do at all. That's why I think it's so cool, the end product, because I don't have that creative gene, to see what you all did, your team, our team working together. And from my standpoint, just staying out of the way as much as I can and allowing creative people to do it. So if there's creative people listening out there, there are really cool things that you may never have thought of before that you can do with your companies, such as what Greg did, and that is thinking out of the box of, instead of just being shoe or boot centric at his company, to say, what else can we do to make something really neat out there that is not just this everyday run of the mill fitting people's needs. Yep.
It was a ton of fun. We'll definitely do it again.
So let's talk about Greg. Your office is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, pretty close to home. Tell us, from you as a professional, as a manager, as somebody who's well into their career, what it really means to be based where you want to be based, and then the Great Lakes region as an outdoor company.
Well, I mean, this is, again, one of those things that COVID is changing fast, right? I always thought I wanted to be out west, like as a kid. I had every intention to leave Michigan behind and go out west and live. But I look at the Great Lakes region and I love it. I'll never leave it. I love our fresh water. I love our big woods. And that's just where I want to live. But I know you look at today and, virtual world has made the world a lot bigger place. People are working remotely more and more. But West Michigan is still our roots as a company. Wolverine was founded in Rockford. And that's where our headquarters still is today. Rockford's right outside of Grand Rapids. But it just allows us to have, access to the outdoors, to test our products in several different environments, whether, it's our beautiful summers or our hard winters. It allows you to really test product in a real world situation.
That's awesome. So, Greg, if somebody's interested in a career to get into sales or product line management, which you've gravitated toward, where you're managing product lines, How does somebody do that? I mean, if somebody's in college right now or somebody's just getting out of college, what could you say that, hey, this would be a good major in college to get to the path where Greg Glover is? And what are the expectations versus the reality of that?
For me personally, I'm still a believer in retail experience. If you can come through the world of retail, you're going to learn a lot, about how the business operates, learn a lot about the consumer. It's not a must, but I definitely think it's a leg up. One thing I didn't have that I wish I would have had, I wish I would have, probably taken more, business classes and more marketing classes throughout my time in college. It surely would have helped today. Sometimes I still think, maybe I should go back and take some of those classes or audit those classes. But as you very politely said, I've been around a long time, so I'm not necessarily a young buck. And having two kids doesn't necessarily give me the time to go back to school. But I think, just getting involved in the outdoors, like that's the kind of the fun thing about being part of the outdoors is you're adding to, people's next adventure, wherever that may be. Every project that we build, I know the team of people that I work with, we build product like we're building it for a friend. We want to build the best product that we can, and we want to make sure that it serves you wherever you go. So, when we, have products that fail, and I think everybody has products that fail from time to time, we take it personal, like we let you down. So, the next time we're looking to, how do we make it better? So,
but if you're not swinging the bat, you're never going to hit the ball either.
Exactly. Like I coach my son's baseball team, and I have some boys that get pretty upset when they don't hit, and I tell them, what is a major league hitter's batting average? If you're really good, you're hitting 300. But that means you're only hitting the ball 3 out of 10 times. So I have to remind them of that.
In your position, if you only hit the ball 300%, if you're only hitting 300 in your launches of your product, I think you're going to be looking for a new career.
I don't have that kind of grace.
Exactly. So, Greg, in your role as a senior product management director, what are some of the biggest struggles that you have right now?
Some of the biggest struggles, is that we're just in a crowded market. The consumer has so many choices today, which is great. We're all consumers. We all love to have choices. But how do you keep your consumer loyal to you? For us, it's, to continue to build great products. We want to, follow through on the legacy that Merrell has. Merrell's been around a long time, and I want to ensure that we're continuing to, preserve that name and building good products for all the consumers and building towards a positive future.
Greg, what would you say is your biggest business success in your career?
I think, I've probably had, I've had a lot of success in my career that I can be very proud of. But I think, probably the one that stands out to me the most is the fact that about 5 years ago, I was given the opportunity to launch from the ground up Merrell's Work division. Not too often are we given the opportunity to grow something from absolutely nothing. On day one, it was a clean piece of paper. So developing the business plan of where it could go and what it was going to be, that was an amazing opportunity, especially with a brand like Merrell behind me. And I think when I'm done with my career, I'll always look back and probably say that's the one thing that I'm probably the most proud of.
And I'm assuming that they gave you that project because you've worked really hard. You've had a lot of successes for them, and it wasn't just because you're a good-looking guy.
There's a reason that we're doing a podcast, Tom. This mug is for radio.
Well, yeah, you got two of us then, because I'll only speak for one of us, but if you're saying that, then we'll say two of us. So, Greg, what can we look forward to in the future from Merrell? I know you
Oh,
probably can't let a lot of the cat out of the bag on development and whatnot, but what can we look forward to?
I tell you, I mean, I'm very lucky that I work with such a innovative team that comes up with ideas and concepts that are well beyond anything that I would have ever dreamt of. Um, just technologies are constantly, getting better and better. The way that we build shoes, the materials that we can put into shoes are better today. Things are just becoming lighter and faster and more sleek. Um, and just the influence that athletic footwear is having on the outdoors um, is awesome. I think you're going to continue to see our product, get faster and sleeker, which is really exciting. It's no longer is the outdoors just a brown leather boot. It's much more than that.
I'm going to have to pick your brain because I need a really good new hiking boot to take me on some of my fall voyages up in the mountains so I don't get all blistered up, but yet I have my feet are dry and I can side hill mountains and do all that before I'm too old to do it.
I might know somebody.
So this next section, Greg, we're going to give you a little bit of a reprieve now. Now we're going to dig into you a little bit personally here. Yes, sir. This segment is called the Packed Questions segment. So we're going to ask you a couple personal questions here. Your favorite place you've ever traveled to?
Oh, I've had a lot of places that I absolutely love and probably would go back. A few years ago, we visited Hawaii as a family. That was fantastic. But I think, for me, I would tell anybody that ever gets the opportunity to visit Asia to go. Like, that was probably one of the trips that I was probably most surprised by. I kind of went kicking and screaming for the first time. It wasn't really on my bucket list of a place to visit, and I could not have been more wrong. I loved it. So between China and Vietnam, if you ever get the chance, I'd definitely go again.
And you've been to both many times since
Many a
then.
time since.
What is the best piece of advice that you ever received?
I'm going to give that to. I'm going to go with professional advice because I've gotten lots of advice over my career. But the first job where I was actually put in a position of hiring people, my boss at the time told me to always hire people that were smarter than me. Steve Peterson, he's born in Duluth, but now he's our VP of sales for Wolverine brand. But he told me to always hire people that are smarter than me. And I stuck to that, and it has served me very well.
I was given that advice from somebody early on too, and I said, but that's not much of a challenge with me. So you're very much an outdoorsman. You love to hunt, you love to fish. Favorite
Absolutely.
hunting or fishing trip, or both?
Well, I think what I love about hunting is I hunt with a group of guys in our camp. There's 9 of us, and I just like the camaraderie of camp. So I mean, anytime I get to go to camp, get to spend time in the woods, get to spend time with that group, it's very special to me. But my son is now 12 years old, so I would say anytime that I get to spend in the woods with him is quite memorable. Last year, I was lucky enough to be with him on two hunts where he was able to harvest his first couple of deer. His first one being a doe, and then mid November we were able to harvest his first buck. And I think if I never got to hunt again, that'd be just fine having that memory.
I know it was pretty special to you because I got one heck of a lot of pictures and text and all that stuff. And you as a conservationist, we know you ate all that deer and consumed all that great deer, and you guys give back a lot more to the land than you ever take. And I just know that because I know you very well. Greg, what is your biggest fear?
Besides spiders, because I don't like spiders. Like, I'll do snakes. I don't like spiders. I I think, my biggest fear is really kind of making sure that I leave behind a strong legacy. Like what is the legacy of Greg Glover? When I'm gone from this earth, what's the legacy that I'm going to leave behind? Um, I was, I say, unfortunate enough to lose my father at a very young age, but he left behind a strong legacy, and I want to make sure that I do the same. So when I go, when it's my time to leave, that I've left this place better than I found it.
Yeah, I can tell you as a friend, you don't need to fear that because you're well on your way. So it doesn't need to be a fear. Just keep being the great human being that you are. Greg, we appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. Thank you for opening our eyes to the career path of somebody who's been very successful in business and moved into different areas, and giving people some advice of how they can get into careers in business from different directions where maybe you didn't actually think you were going to start out. We appreciate that and your time that you took for us today. Folks, today we've been with Greg Glover, Senior Product Management Director from Merrell Footwear Company, a division of Wolverine Worldwide. Greg, thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon, Tom.
Boy, I certainly hope so. And folks, this has been the Leader of the Pack. And until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors. 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 Outdoors.